Welcome to another episode of From Impossible to Inevitable. I am your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I have a special guest with us today, our first podcast guest. This is Jake Bauer, my beloved husband, with us today. I thought it would be fun to kind of interview people on their personal philosophy of life. The point being that, like, everybody has these personal development um, principles that they live by, and without even the label of personal development principle. And we all live by these things, and we kind of feel like if everybody were to live by this world would be a better place. And the thing is we all have different principles that we live by. So to kick off this idea of mine, I have brought my husband Jake on the show with us today. If you are listening to us on a podcast platform, please know that there is a YouTube version of this. So anything that Jake and I do that is silly, you will catch on the video on YouTube. So there will be a link to that in the show notes that you can go and click through. It'll be really interesting to see if I get more YouTube video views on this episode than my previous ones because I have you with me. Anyways, Jake has his own podcast as well. He actually started it last year and inspired my journey. It is a customer experience based podcast, so it's business based. There's still some good personal development things in there because he lives with me, and so he has to hear me in his ear all the time. However, it is business based and it is called Beyond the Survey, and we will put a link to that in the show notes too to give Jake some extra love. So, without further ado, Jake, why don't you say hello to our audience and then give us what your personal philosophy is.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Glad to be here. Excited to be on your show. And yeah, I don't know what else I can do for a great introduction. You already kind of covered everything. I'm your husband. Super excited to be here and share my philosophy. So I do have my own podcast, Beyond the Survey. And as Megan mentioned, it is more business based, but I try and broaden it every now and then. And I know I do have Megan in my ear all the time, but I'm really good at turning it back on its side and how it can relate to customer experience. So that may end up happening today, but really excited to be on your show. Thanks for the invite or the pressure. But yeah, so my personal philosophy that if everyone lived by, it would be a better place. And the core gist of it is forming your own opinions about people rather than having them, I'm not going to say the right word, but partially formed for you by hearing other people's opinions about that person. And why I think it would make the world a better place is because then we would probably be more willing to reach out to more people, talk to more people of our own accord, and regardless of how they looked or what we heard from other people about that person, we would not let that cloud any judgment we have or help us make, false judgments about that person as we approach them, to talk to them, get to know them. And the reason why I feel like why that's so important is because we are a super we need feedback from other people based society, right? Like when we go shopping, we always look at all the reviews. Are the reviews good? Are they bad? Are they mostly 5-star, mostly 3-star? And if they're all 1-star, we're not going to get the product. If it's a 5-star, we're like, yeah, definitely, like, easy purchase. And I think it's the same thing with people, right? When we talk to other people, they're like, oh yeah, so-and-so, like they're just, like, I've had such a bad experience with them, blah, 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 blah. And then when you see that person, that kind of clouds our judgment already. And they're like, oh yeah, so-and-so doesn't like that person, so I'm not going to go approach them or say hi, or I'm already tainted essentially. I know that was really long-winded, but there you go.
So yeah, basically what you're saying is, we should limit our consumption of secondhand opinions on people. Is that right?
I don't know about limit the consumption of it because I mean it's really great. I mean it is good and helpful to hear that feedback um, or those reviews of other people. But I think it's a matter of filtering it out and not letting it actually cloud your judgment of that person before you've even met them.
Okay. So what do you think about those situations where, you want a personal referral? So you want somebody to kind of like vouch for this person, or, you want some like validating, like maybe this person showed up in your life and you're like, yeah, I like them, I think, but what do other people think about this person?
No, and I think that's good too. Like I said, getting those opinions about those other people can be helpful, but also their interactions may have been different than yours, or their place in life when that person met. When they met that person, maybe their place in life was different. Maybe they've changed and become a different person, and that other person doesn't know that or hasn't experienced them in that way, right? So you're getting essentially a snapshot of how that of that person's of that referral essentially, and maybe not. I mean, that can be in some cases. I know in some cases, like if you know that person really well and you hang out with them all the time, you have your specific opinions about that person. When other people ask you about them, you're going to give an honest opinion about it. But also, me as a recipient, I've had that a lot where some people have been like, yeah, oh, that guy or, that person, they're not like, they're this or that, blah, 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 and then when I go and I actually meet the person, totally different experience than that other person had, right? And so I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
wait, they totally, either they misjudged you or just the interactions they've had with you have been limited enough that you don't really know this person or who they are or this or that. So I think that's where it's good, but it's good to have a filter or not just say, oh, yeah, they're a bad person, so don't interact with them, and then don't interact with them. I'd say, oh, that's an interesting opinion. Why do you say that about that person? What experience have you had with that person where you're going to recommend me not to interact with them? I'll usually take that
Yeah.
into consideration and be leery, but then I'll, go and introduce myself or meet that person and then form my own opinions.
Yeah, you bring out up a good point there. And there was a situation where I had just like that, where I did like this play date for our oldest, and interacted with the mom, and it was, while the girls played, and it was fun or whatever. But we left that interaction, and it was fine. Like it wasn't bad, but it was fine, and there was no follow-up play date or anything like that because it was just fine. And then just that was years ago. And then recently, a friend suggested that I meet a friend of hers because she thinks that will really hit it off. And it ended up being the same woman that I spent some time with at that play date. And instead of being like, oh, we met before, I had the self awareness to be like, yeah, we've met before. And I am a different person now than I was then. I was so much less vibrant then at that period of my life than I am now. This would be a completely different experience. So I'm totally open to meeting this woman again, which I think would be fun, and that hasn't happened yet. But I totally get what you're saying there, where different points of your life, you're a different person. It's just how growth is.
Yeah, and I think that plays right into what you're saying. Like you miss out on opportunities by taking those recommendations, those judgments, those reviews of other people, or even your own personal views of that person, and just like holding on to them rather saying, hey, like you were self-aware enough to say, I was a different person back then, so it was okay. It wasn't bad, it was just okay. But yeah, she might have been a different person back then too. And now you've both changed because time has passed, and now you can reconnect and see how it goes. And either it'll be a great experience and you'll have a new connection, have something to do, you'll be able to network that, or it'll be the same. And if it's the same, it's not a big deal. It's just, oh, yeah, it was fine, but it's the same as it was before. But as long as you don't like hold on to that opinion, and are
Yeah.
and are willing to change it, I think you have a better chance of one. And I'm gonna throw this back to your impossible to inevitable, because is that right? Was that yeah? That was right. Thought I got it in reverse. Um, but like it could open more doors. You just never know. And so, because I've had a lot of experiences, like I already mentioned, where people are like, but then I go and meet them. I'm like, oh, hey, man, I like this person. I could get along with them just fine. It's not like it's a great relationship. It's fine. But in other cases, I've gone to meet that person. That person was has been a great person in my network, and I'm so glad that I did not rely on other people's experiences with that person, because that has helped me kind of get to where I am today too. So
Yeah, you're in a great spot. Little known fact, if you don't know Jake, you don't know that he is really great with people. He is a great people person. He's a social chameleon, and he's really great. Our oldest has that trait too. She's just super good with people. Um, and so that fits actually. I didn't actually put that together until right now, like your personal philosophy of not allowing any prejudgment to color your first meeting or your first interaction with somebody. And that probably helps you become such a people person because you're willing to let people show them, or you're willing to let people show you who they are rather than approaching them having already decided.
yeah,
Because
and honestly,
that can be super detrimental actually when you've already decided.
no, totally true. And I will admit I'm not 100% at it. Sometimes I do go and I'm just like, ugh, and then I leave that conversation going, oh my gosh, I ruined it because I went in with the preconceived notions of what other people had said, and it could have been a better conversation, but it wasn't because I went in there going, oh man, this person is. So I
Yeah, and
kind of
that kind of
ruined it
goes
there for
back
me.
to like you get what you look for, right? Like if you're expecting this person to be not super, your brain is just going to be pointing out all the things that they say or do or whatever that is not super. And you're going to be like, "Well, you're a not super person like I expected," because your brain's automatically going to want to make you right because that's just what your brain does. You're like, "Oh, I found evidence for it. I'm right." But if you go in there with a blank slate, then they get to put whatever it is on that slate instead of you having already decided it for them.
Yeah, and I love the way you put that as expectations, because it is a matter of we set preliminary expectations in our mind before we meet somebody, before a situation, before a particular experience, and that those expectations can also be set by our environments, the people around us, the things around us, help set us up, or for success or failure in that circumstance, and we experience it every day, and it's something we just need to be more cognizant of, in realizing that, oh my goodness, I'm setting an expectation for this interaction. We're going to go to this dinner with so and so. What are my expectations? Do I have any? And if I do, are they too high? Are they too low? Or if I don't have any expectations, that I feel like that can sometimes go to a fault. I'm not expecting anything, and so nothing. It's just like a blah. For example, maybe we're going out to dinner with some friends that we haven't seen a really long time tonight, and it's like, what are my expectations at
Listeners
this
of the
dinner?
show,
Yes, listeners of the show, what are my expectations going into this? It's gonna be fun to reconnect. I'm excited. But if I went in there going, oh yeah, oh man, it's been a long time. Is this gonna be awkward? Then when you go in there, it's gonna be awkward. And
it's going to
I
be
and honest
awkward.
and honestly, I can make it really awkward if I think that way, and it's gonna be awkward. I will make it awkward. So
Right.
it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna enjoy it, and then my mind will make it fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, I like that. So, if everyone were to implement this, where they went into first meetings and first interactions with other people with kind of a blank slate and let the other person show them who they are, what do you think would be the biggest change to come from that? The biggest impact?
That's a good question. The biggest change and the biggest impact would probably be helping the world in general not to judge so quickly, right? Because we judge people before we even meet them. And that judgment is, I feel like it's a negative type of, it's not like a positive judgment. It's a negative judgment, right? And it makes interactions and causes a lot of controversy and strife and stress just in our own lives because we judge that person, we judge that situation before it's even happening. And if we stopped doing that, we would have a lot more, one, positive experiences, positive interactions with people, and then be able to better connect with everyone around us. Because I feel like everyone has something great that they can share with the world, right? They have something, or maybe not with the world, but like with their world and their bubble and their sphere. You know, they have something great that they can share that they can. But if they have one bad experience or interaction with somebody, and that person goes around and tells a bunch of people, and all those people believe it, like that's going to limit, one, the people that they can help. Maybe might not want to go for help or get that specific value they need from that person. And I think it would make it so we could all shine, really, rather than feeling like we have to hide because we had a bad experience with somebody. I mean, I feel that way sometimes. If I had a bad experience, I'm going back in my head going, oh my goodness, like that was awful. Now they're going to tell other people about me in this one light, you know, and those people, if I go and try and interact with them, they're already going to be they're already going to be set up for like, oh, this he's a doofus. He's dumb. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Or, you know, he's a joke, whatever it is. And then I'm going to like go into myself and be like, oh, okay, I can't talk to that person now because I'm afraid that they've spoken with this other person who's, you know, and goes like that. So it'd allow us to all shine more and shine with each other. And honestly, I think it'd help us all work together better and find ways that we could help support each other in anything that we're doing.
Yeah, I really like that. And I really like how you like the whole idea of shining more, actually, because I mean, how often are we afraid to make a mistake because we don't want like this? I make this one mistake, and then there's this like domino effect of negative consequences from making this one mistake, even if it was an innocent mistake, you know? And you're just like, man, I was having a rough day and I accidentally, you know, was rude to this person and now I need to apologize, but they're just going to forever think I'm a rude person when it was really just a bad day. And now I can't ever go to that area of town ever again.
Every day. It happens every day because we're just prone to making those mistakes, right? We have our own emotions that we got to try and wrangle. And sometimes maybe we had a bad interaction and somebody caught us at the wrong time. And you're like, go away. Don't talk to me right now. And then they're like, whoa, dude's rude. Like, I'm never going to come back
Yeah,
and talk to him.
he's touchy, man.
Yeah, I know. But but like those things, like it's a constant. Like it's happening every day, all the time, constantly. And it's almost like there's so much noise that when we hear what other people's opinions are, their feedback, their reviews, their recommendations for other people that's just more noise, right? So it's a matter of filtering out a lot of that noise. And this will go back more maybe like customer experience and business. But the way I try and do my best to find that signal is by going and experiencing it myself, talking to that person myself, going and purchasing that whatever myself is, that whatever item is, doing all those things myself, and then be like, okay, these reviews were right, or well, these reviews were totally wrong. I don't know what happened to have them had such a bad experience, or man, they had a great experience. My experience sucked. Like, what was the difference, right?
Sure. Also, like, pause there for a second, because, like, reviews and recommendations, and even things, hearing things from other people, we take those things in order to avoid pain, in order to avoid things like that. So, I mean, I'm not going to willingly buy something online that has terrible reviews. I'd be like, well, it looked nice, but all the reviews said it was bad quality or it broke or it arrived broken. And I don't want it to arrive and then be like, yeah, well, the reviews were right. Like that's just dumb. Then I feel dumb.
Right.
Like
Yep.
I'm not going to go to a restaurant that has all of these bad reviews. The interesting thing though is like oftentimes when I look for a new book on Audible, there could be the first review is usually a negative review. And it's always really interesting when it's like 3 years old. And then there's like once you expand it, there's a whole list of positive reviews that are like 3 weeks old, a month old, 2 months old, or whatever. And I'm like, why did you spotlight this one, like the one 2-star review? Like, why? That's where it becomes interesting to me, where it's like the bulk of everything says that this is a good book, but then they spotlight the one thing that's negative. They're like, aren't you trying to make money here? Don't you want me to use the like, but whatever, that's beyond the point. Um, so there's got to be a balance there where we can take in other people's experiences and still just use that to inform our own decisions about people so that we don't feel like, oh yeah, well, everybody said he was a liar and a cheat, yet I decided to go into business with him and now, we've got all of this drama.
No,
You know
I
what I
think
mean?
I totally agree. I totally agree. And it's like it contradicts my personal philosophy. But it doesn't, because here you called out a good point though, because the people that we're talking to are spotlighting a specific interaction or a specific scenario rather than getting the full breadth, right? And and even our personal interactions with those people may not be as accurate, may not be that accurate either, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, this person's awesome. And then I go, yeah, I totally recommend you go see that person. They're awesome. And then that recommendation, the person I recommended goes over there, talks to them, like, dude, what are you talking about? That was like the worst ever. And I'm like, what? What happened? Like I thought I had a great interaction, right? So, no, you're right. And we are also spotlighting positive spot. So getting the full breadth, and maybe it is getting more and more. Maybe it's just not
Okay.
taking the recommendations based on one, two, or three people, but taking the recommendations on as many people as you can that know that person, right?
That's fair.
And then forming a more accurate assessment. Um, so that's a
And
good
just
point.
using that
I like
as information
yes,
rather than
as
your own
information,
decision going into it.
right? Because
I
just like you
like it.
said, sometimes the negative is just called out. Who knows why?
Yeah.
Like, so let's talk to other people. This person had a negative experience. Did this person? Oh, it seems like everybody's having a negative experience with them. I wonder why, right? Maybe
Okay.
I'll go and see and maybe have my own negative experience with that person. Maybe. And I think with people and products, it's very different, right? If
Sure.
there's like a bunch of negative reviews, I'm not going to go buy something that has a ton of negative reviews.
But yeah,
But
and also like because people and products both change too. I mean, what we're going to stay focused here on people, because that's really what your personal philosophy has to deal with. But taking in time periods of people's lives and allowing that room for growth. Be like, okay, you had a terrible interaction with them 5 years ago. Well, that was 5 years ago. Like hopefully this person has improved and grown and developed themselves to a better place now, and giving some grace for that.
and I think a lot of that comes with, as you judge that, like, be open to giving and receiving feedback from people. Be like, hey, or if it was a bad experience, go approach that person. Be like, hey, sorry, our first interaction, I came off really rough. I apologize. I want that to be better. That's not like me. You caught me at a bad time, right? But I think we're all really afraid to do that too. And
Sure.
then, but if we can approach it that way, also, and again, going back to there's a feedback cycle, and if that person is open and willing to receive feedback, then when you meet them the next time, you would expect that they've changed for the better. But your example is going to
Sure. I
be
think feedback is a whole nother topic, my love.
totally, totally. But I think your example
Um,
right off the bat was just right at the beginning was spot on. Like you had an interaction with this person and it was fine, and then you got recommended to meet this other person. You're like, oh, I've already met them, but I'm happy to re-meet them because I'm different. They're probably different. Let's see how it goes.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing with us your personal philosophy. I appreciate your personal support of the show and its producer, creator, all the hat wearer. We'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. I'm going to try to bring on more guest all stars, all from my very personal sphere of people. So, um, so I think this will be really fun to kind of sprinkle the personal philosophies of others into our regular episodes. So, thank you everyone for your subscriptions and for your reviews and your love and your comments. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your shares. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a great day.